name's Lynne Naylor, and I've been in animation for a really long time, I think over 30 years. And I'm really happy to be here. I was invited here by Patrick, and he invited me to come speak at FMX. Basically what I was presenting here was the detective in design. I'm mainly a designer and an idea person, and so I wanted to give some indication of something inspirational as far as how do I find the design that I'm looking for on a job? How do I finish my work on time and come up with the character, the design that everybody needs, or even that I need? Well, the problem is I've worked on a lot of different projects, so it depends on where I'm hired in. So I've been hired in as a character designer, say for Samurai Jack, and I was the lead character designer, but I was working very closely with him to achieve whatever vision he had for the show. But we had production, it was on production, so we had 60 or more designs to get in every 2 weeks. So we had a lot of material to go through. Basically I would break it down to, they were incidentals, they were main incidentals. And so I break it down to the character itself, come up with a character, and when he approved that, then I would take him into all the poses that everyone needed to see and have them finished so that they could complete the rest of the production overseas, as far as animating it, doing turnarounds, different expressions, poses, all that kind of stuff. So that's completely different than visual development, which on something like Creatures versus Aliens, or Monsters versus Aliens, the title changed 3 or 4 times. It used to be called, at the beginning it was Rex Havocs. So anyway, on that, it was more about finding the character, even because as I was designing, it was being boarded at the same time. And so it was basically connecting with the director on the feature and the writers and those people involved in finding who the character really is, and iconically how they wanted that character to be audience friendly and really win, make them so attractive that people would love their feature, So in that case, it was more about doing the character over and over and over and over again or doing a lot of different varieties of the same character. Different looks, different facial expressions, different hair, it was a female, different clothing, stature, everything, and so most of those characters, it was a lot different. And stylistically, they would reference to Mad Magazine, and they'd say, take a look at this reference, take a look at that, mimic this style, that style, other style. So it's more about solving the problem up front rather than being in production and meeting a air date schedule. And you have to meet the air date because otherwise there's nothing on the air. So development is a lot different, and the expectation is that you're being hired as an idea person, you're being hired to come up with something, but you can't fall in love with your own designs. You could say, oh, this is perfect, but it doesn't mean anything because they're searching for something. It's like casting, for the actor that's in live action, they're going to be the one that says, this is our character. For me, being a professional in the industry, my biggest hope is to fulfill a creator or a director or anybody in that position to fulfill their intent and their vision, to really find that connection of what they want and what they need. And so you have to ask the right questions. Sometimes they don't necessarily aren't able to articulate what they need. So it's a searching thing, it's a dialogue that you need to have with them. Some of them are really good, like on Lego 2, I was fortunate to work with Patrick, which I think you may know him because he got me here. And I was really fortunate to work with him because he could articulate things very, very well. and he could talk about different reference and things he liked to see. And also, he really liked rough drawings. Like don't do a finished drawing. Don't do something to look beautiful and finished and precious and all that to impress anybody, because they'll see something in a rough. If you do a bunch of roughs and give them a lot of ideas, they have more to choose from, and they can narrow it down and make a decision. With Genndy, I love Genndy. It's like a long relationship. He was very direct. He's very, very direct with all of his dialogue and very, very clear, and usually has reference and things that he's thinking of in the first place. And he can usually do he does sketches and stuff like that, rough sketches to hand over to you. And he usually comes up with a lot of material. So it isn't hard working with, it's just fun. It's exciting working with Genndy. And then the other thing is, on Samurai Jack, for instance, it was easy as well because of the board artists. The board artists were really, really good. So when they did their boards, they were not so much being tight, but they had expression. And a lot of the characters that they were acting out in the storyboard, you had a feel for who that character was because of the story that they were telling. So in VizDev, you're working from script, but in TV, when you're working as a character designer, you're working from the storyboard, so you have more material. You know, I work really primitively. I just, anything I've got, even napkins in a restaurant, whatever I've got. I usually work from lined paper sometimes. I don't care if it has lines on it, whatever. I'll clean it up in, Photoshop or, So I do a lot of ideas. Sometimes I work deliberately with a felt pen or a ink pen, because then I can't get, again, too precious with it, too perfect, that perfection, the shape as being perfect, because it's more of the essence of the character and it's more of the personality. Also, I like to sketch it out really quickly because of the movement. Very often you fall in love with a design and the board guy would get it and can't even move it, can't move it around. So I would start moving the character around, doing expressions and stuff, and then take it from there. But it's not always necessarily always like that. Like I've gone into my iPad Pro and gone into Procreate, and just, they have great brushes and stuff there, and great inking and stuff. So I'll just go in there really fast, because you can sit in a coffee shop and do that really fast too. So it's not finite. It's not just one way necessarily. Well, first of all, it's a direction thing, and it also depends on the gig. So if I'm working for TV, they might be doing flash animation, but they're not doing 3D. So that's really not an issue. It's more about moving it in a flash sense, how to separate and break up the characters so that you have a held body with arms moving and stuff like that. So how are we going to break it up, rather than how are we going to sculpt it three-dimensionally? So that's completely different. But then if I get a gig for feature, it really depends on the direction. One of that the director would give me. On one of the shows I was on, it was just a one-off TV feature called Lucky, and all of those guys, everyone was involved. So the director was there, but then all the guys that did all the composite work and everything, and built the characters, the supervisor was in all the meetings. So they would direct me as well. They would say, we don't want, I'm very I can go way out there on a design, like really nugget it out, do a lot of detail. And they're like, Lynne, I was so excited because the Leprechaun is a fantastical world. There's witches, there's all kinds of elves and stuff going on. And so I was going crazy, putting all this gear and belts and buckles and, eyelash, all this stuff. And they're like, no, you got to dumb it way down, because we got to build this stuff and we want it really simplistic, and we're going to be putting texture, you know, like all the clothing and the texture. And we weren't really used to that. And it was the first time for the director to work with those people. And it was the first time, it wasn't the first time for me, but first time for the art director. So they were very concerned about having a collaboration so that we could cross that bridge. And I think we did it very well. And it was really good for me because I had to do characters that would be sympathetic and, you know, attractive in a very simplistic way. And I like the challenge of that. I would also do a 3D sketch to show how to build it, and turns and things to show how to build it, so that they would have an easier time of it. Like, how do you sweep the hair over if it's gonna stick out like that? Like, where do you go with it? So I would do like sketches and things like that. But a different situation would be on Lego 2, where Patrick was saying to me, you know, everybody's doing this in Photoshop and it's getting really tight, and there's not any personality. I was doing environments at that time, and he was saying, you know, we want roughs, and we don't want you to think about the Lego